is what we will be covering today. So it's everything to do with replacing deck cranes on offshore substations, but it could as well be for any deck crane offshore. You start off with the procurement phase, of course. You can select a couple of different modes for procurement. This depends on how much you want it to be depending on one supplier, how much internal resources you have, internal competences you have, how much service you require during the complete project. All these things influence your choice for the selection of mode of procurement. Direct modes of procurement involve a direct line between the end user and the manufacturer of a crane. This has advantages that you are directly involved with your crane manufacturer, that you can influence the fabrication process and the design and how your final crane would look like. On the other hand, you're also depending on this one supplier, and you cannot escalate. So if you run up to a certain problem, there's no way to escalate to any other competent party. On the other hand, there's indirect modes of procurement, where you put a contractor in between the end user and the manufacturer. This contractor will take over parts of the responsibilities for warranties, for service later on. So he wants to make sure that the quality that he proposes to you is the right quality for your project. During the complete process, he will add value. So he will monitor the fabrication. He will make sure that the fabrication book is correct. All these services are added by the contractor if you choose from indirect mode procurement. You can also hire a consultant to support you. This consultant will advise on the most critical parts of your procurement process and during the fabrication process as well. And you can also motivate the consultant to take on additional responsibilities like procurement on your behalf. If we consider replacement of deck cranes offshore on offshore substations, we always advise to take a like-for-like type of crane. So if you have a knuckle boom crane installed on your substation, choose another knuckle boom crane. If you have a stiff boom crane, source a new stiff boom crane. If you don't do that, we often see that you have challenges with your pedestal and with your load introduction resulting from the new crane. This can either be a direct result of the new crane different loads, but also from changed guidelines over the years. After you have selected your procurement mode, you will run into fabrication immediately. And you first start with an expediting phase. During the kickoff meeting, you will discuss what you have agreed during the commercial phase, and you will always also express what you expect from your manufacturer. It is at this phase where you can add most of your requirements. You can involve your final users, but also get experts to get the starting point straight for the design of your new crane. You will ask your manufacturer to provide you with an updated design, and after that design is finished, fabrication starts. During fabrication, there's a lot of things that you have to monitor. Of course, the quality assurance is a big part of the buyer of the crane. You cannot assume this is the same process as when you would buy a car. If you would buy a car, then all the quality systems are up to a very high standard. But with a crane, you often have customized parts. Manufacturers explain that it's a standard product, but it's not really standard. If you don't monitor the fabrication process meticulously, then there will be challenges in the end. Also, to get your fabrication book to a good standard, which is workable for you, requires dedicated monitoring of the fabrication process. The fabrication process ends with a factory acceptance test. This typically takes a few days. First, crane manufacturer will install the crane on a testbed. My advice is be present during the installation on this testbed, because this will give you a really good insight in how the crane works, how it's installed. During the factory acceptance test, a punch list will come out, which will need to be resolved before the package can be transported to your shore facility. Then starting the preparation of the offshore works. It all starts with identifying a philosophy of how to install. Will you be installing it with a crane vessel, a jack-up barge, or with a lifting system that's installed on the substation? That's a critical question you have to ask in the beginning of the preparation phase for your offshore execution. When you started up the fabrication process for the new crane, start with this preparation phase already. There's a lot of procedures that have to be created during this preparation phase. For mobilization, you have certain procedures that will help you mobilize efficiently. In the offshore execution phase, you really need a lot of procedures to make sure that the installation, that everybody knows what's to be done during installation. You also have to design the new interface between the new crane and your deck. It might be that you have to do additional reinforcements. Create procedures for those reinforcements as well. How do you plan to do the reinforcements and when do you need to do them? I'll come back to that later. And finally, the commissioning and testing procedures. You have to prepare that up front. As a result from these procedures, you will generate equipment lists. Every step of the process requires different equipment. Preparing the equipment, if you start 1 month before mobilization, it's sufficient. Typically, it's not complex equipment that you need, except when you use temporary lifting systems to perform the offshore lift. That will require a little bit additional time. After preparation, we will go offshore. Removing the existing crane, we advise to take that apart from installation. So first, go offshore to remove the existing crane. Put it alongside or put it on a jack-up barge. Try to separate the removal from the installation because you will need to modify the deck maybe. Or if you take off the existing crane, the pedestal might have surprises which you need to rectify. You always have to make sure that the new crane can be installed. This might require deck reinforcements. It might require works to the pedestal, inspection, flange facing, all those kind of things. Take time for that. Then we come down to installation. Installation of a new deck crane is where it becomes fun for Conbit. We have a lot of added value. Identify how you are planning to do the offshore lift. Are you using crane vessels, jack-up barges, or are you using a substation-based approach? On the substation, you can install temporary lifting systems like you see displayed in the picture with the model lifting system, or you can include a temporary rental crane. Both have approaches. External crane vessel approach or the deck of the substation have its pros and cons. The critical part where you do the lift with a crane vessel or jack-up barge is to position it on deck. You want to limit the impact that's resulting when you touch down your new crane. If you use a substation-based approach, so you do the offshore lift with a lifting system which is installed on the substation, the critical part is lifting the new crane off the supply vessel. You don't want to hit the crane with your vessel during the lifting operation. A lot of other pros and cons which are listed here on the table. Most complicated ones are the cost impact for both systems, but both approaches is different, and the availability of vessels. Last phase, before handing over the crane to the final user, is commissioning. Installation and commissioning requires a different set of skills, which involves hydraulic, mechanical, electrical instrumentation. It's quite a diverse range of competencies that have to be available offshore. Your crane manufacturer can assemble a crew that can perform this job, but they typically only want to send a commissioning engineer. This commissioning engineer makes sure that they do the final tweaking of the crane before it's tested. Make sure you have a competent crew on board that can solve problems when they occur. And don't depend only on your commissioning engineer of your crane manufacturer. Then we do testing and inspection, of course. All systems will be connected and tested. In the end, we will perform a load test. as part of the site acceptance test. And this load test requires load test equipment, typically water bags. Make sure that you have them on board and that you have crew that can operate those water bags. It might require rope access, for example. Site acceptance test might have punch list items. Some of these punch list items are minor and can be rectified after the site acceptance test. Others you will need to do before you get your initial inspection certificate. And the initial inspection certificate is basically the handover document from the manufacturer or the contractor to the final user. Then there's, of course, lifecycle services required to keep your crane up to date and up to speed. Typically, they have to be inspected annually and 5 yearly to meet statutory requirements. Spare parts is, of course, a topic that is recurring for many pieces of equipment, but including cranes. Once you need a spare part, you will need it relatively fast, and that requires attention during the complete process. So when you do procurement and fabrication, but also during the replacement of your crane. Make sure that you write down all the lessons learned. Make sure that you have all the data in your fabrication book so you can order the required spare parts. Distinguish between OEM spare parts, original spares, and other spare parts. Which parts are critical? Ask your contractor that performs the installation, for example. Ask the consultants that you involve. Which spare parts do we need to order? Don't rely on the spare part list that you get from your manufacturer automatically. During the complete project, you might face challenges with your current crane. Your new crane is not ready yet, but you initiated this project for a reason. Maybe your crane gets out of operation.